What about it, YouTube? This is Aaron with Overland, Nevada, back in the garage. I have a Predator 3500. I just picked up from Harbor Freight. It was a refurbished one. Got it for pretty cheap considering the type of generator it is. If you're here on this video right now, most likely you've searched exactly what I'm about to talk about. So you know all about the generator. You've probably looked at reviews and you realize it's a dang decent generator. So I want to talk to you about the remote start features on this, or adding a remote start feature on this so that you can use it like one of your higher end Westinghouses or Onins Cummings. So let's get into this. Okay, so as we get started, first thing I want to address is there are many videos on YouTube right now about this particular setup. I did not make this setup. I don't know who made this setup. So whoever originally did it, congratulations. I can't vet you, so I can't give you credit for doing it. So with that aside, I want to talk about one of the things that I've noticed on YouTube that has not been covered. A lot of people have talked about doing this. A lot of people have showed from, say, this vantage point, what they've done. I added an actuator, I put a remote start, I did this, I did that, but didn't really go into the how-to, the nuts and bolts of the wiring. Especially if you're not super confident with electrical, it can be daunting to try to take it on without having some clearer instruction. So what I want to do is I want to create this video for that. I want some clear instructions for you guys on how to wire it in and how each piece functions so that you're confident in actually wiring it together. So those of you that already done this is not a slight on you. Congratulations on your ability to understand electronics. This is for those that may not be as confident as some of the other ones of us. In addition, this will hopefully build your confidence so that you can do more cool stuff. So, like I said, I got the generator. It was super cheap, and you can find these kits on eBay and Amazon, I think, even to different websites. And I mean, they go for plus hundreds to, I think I even saw a kit that was $200, and that's just, to me, that's ridiculous because of the cost of the actual mechanics behind it. So if you have a little bit of extra wire around the house, some butt splices and spade connectors and whatnot, then you're really down to, I need to buy the remote relay bank, and I need to buy the door actuator, which I think, if you look at it on Amazon, is coming in right about 25, 30 bucks. Super cheap to do this. If you need to buy wire and stuff, then it could be up to maybe 40 bucks. So let's get into this. As you've seen on the other videos, there's a key fob. A, B, C are going to be used. D stays empty. A is the starter. B is the choke, which is operating the door actuator. And then C is the grounding switch, which kills the motor. So let's get into what this looks like. A, B, C, and D. If you open this package, logic may dictate that 1 is A, 2 is B, 3 is C, and 4 is D. That's not the case, at least on this one. 4 is A, 3 is B, excuse me, 3 is B, and 2 is C. We won't use number 1, which is D. But the way this works out is you have a terminal here. The far one's positive and the close one's negative. That one's pretty simple to find out because it has the positive symbol and the negative symbol. That's voltage positive, voltage negative. You're going to have power come into this board, and I'll discuss the routing of my power in just a second. But you have power coming into this board, and then you have a jumper going to relay A or bank 4 and a jumper to relay B or bank 3, because these two actually need 12 volt to operate. So let's start with relay A. What you have, if you're not familiar with relays, it's simple. It's a switch. A relay is a switch that's operated by 12 volts. So you have power coming in, and then you have power coming out. 12 volt in, 12 volt out. Inside this circuitry, it's taking 12 volt and ground to operate the relay. So when the signal comes in from the key fob to close the circuit on the relay to allow power through, it's just a switch. It's just a remote switch. It's just not one that you toggle with your fingers. It's one that you would toggle with a low level of 12 volts. So that power comes in and then it goes out. So the way I have it ran for the starter is real simple. And some people have done this differently. You can look at all the different videos and choose how you want to do it. But I have power coming to the starter switch wires, and the white and black one is the one that we want to use. What happens is on this switch, the standard momentary toggle switch on this side, you have positive, which is the solid white wire, and some people have tapped off this solid white wire for 12 volts because it's hot all the time, and jumped over to here. Again, I'm going to discuss how I wired mine in just a second, but you can do that. A couple things I would recommend is a fuse and or a switch, and we'll discuss the switch in a second because I chose to have a switch. So you have power coming in 12 volt, and then you have, once this momentary switch is pressed on the face of this, you have power going to the starter. So similarly, what you got is you've got, when you hit that A button, you have power coming in, going into the relay, and then you're going out to this black and white wire, which is the positive lead to the starter. So now you're charging that positive lead to the starter, and it's going back to the starter and starting it. The nice thing about what's happening here is you don't have to add any more electronics to ensure that you're not backfeeding electricity anywhere and causing shorts or hot wires or anything like that. So because this switch is momentary, it's always open until you press it. And so then it's going down to this terminal and stopping. There's no power going through and backfeeding back to the battery, or which shouldn't be a problem anyways. But so power comes in and it goes to the starter. So that's really it. So that's the concept of how this works. You're going to apply the same concept to the door actuator. Power comes in the relay, you click the B, it closes the circuit, and it throws power out to the door actuator. Now, I'll talk about that wiring once I just hit this real quick. I use yellow because I wanted to have some differentiation between the wiring, what's 12 volt hot all the time, and what's, or 12 volt say in and 12 volt out, because this is not hot all the time because I did put a switch in. So anyways, going back, I ran the wire in just behind the AC bank here, which is inverted power, and I ran it through the hole, and then it comes out right here. I kept it loomed just because I'm OCD like that. I kept enough to where it kind of sits loose down in here, and I will come back and I'll zip tie it off to different portions here just so that it stays there. But then it comes up to your door actuator and then powers the door actuator. So about the door actuator wiring, let's talk about that for 1 second. You have green, which is we're using it as a positive, and you have blue, which we're using as a negative. The reason I say we're using in this situation as those is because when you wire it this way, green positive, blue negative, when a power is applied, it actuates the servo motor to pull the actuator in, which then applies choke. When it's not being used, choke is then disengaged, and it's left that way. If you wire this separately, or sorry, not separately, backwards, or opposite of what I have now, what's going to do is it's going to want to be in this normal position, and then when you apply power, it's pushing out. So be mindful when you're wiring that you want this actuator to pull in and hold until you let go of the power. And the proper wiring for that is blue's ground, green is positive. If you flip that, then it's going to move opposite. That's why I say the polarity is relative to which direction you want the servo motor to go. That's probably the best way to put it. Now, as far as this door actuator is concerned, where you place it on these little rails is dependent upon how you wire in, what length you wire in the pull. So I just used pitcher hanging wire because it's going to be strong enough to pull that back and forth as long as you want to, but then it's thin enough that it's not going to be an issue. So what I did is, you can kind of see that wire coming down. There's a pin, a roll pin, that sits right at the top of this arm and goes down into that guide. And all I did, and this is what everybody else did, is they'd wrap that wire around that roll pin. And so what happens is when that actuator is pulled, it causes a choke to open. Now, granted, it doesn't open probably as far as it could, but you don't need a lot of choke to get these motors running. Most of the time, you won't need choke at all, especially if you've had it running somewhat in the first place. Okay, so now we've talked about these two. The last thing that's wired in is the grounding switch, which kills the motor. I did something that I've only seen one other person do. And going through all the random videos, I couldn't even find who it is at this point anyways. But let's talk about this. The grounding switch, normally stock, I would say, comes into this plug. And the normal operation is that when this dial is turned off, it grounds out the motor at the same time. I don't like that. And the reason I don't like that is because it doesn't give the option of shutting off the fuel and allowing the generator to run out of fuel when you're ready to store it. So in the normal stock position, when you shut this off, it grounds out the motor, and then it leaves fuel in the carburetor bowl. Now you can store it with stable, and you should. You can put seafoam in it, maybe even two. For me, being OCD like I am, I want to know that that carburetor is dry before I store it. Because even if you're putting stable in it, whatnot, eventually, if you're not on top of maintenance, somewhere down the road, you're going to be pulling that carburetor out to clean it. So this gives you more time to not have to get into that carburetor to clean it, because when you're ready to store it, you can flip the dial to off, allow it to run out of fuel, and shut itself off. So what I've done here is I've taken the plug out, or disconnected it, and then those grounding wires will have another plug end that I don't know what I did with the other end. I cut it off and I put it somewhere because I'm not going to use it. So when you pull the plug apart, you're going to have another end of the plug that I just cut off, which gives you two grounding leads that go back into this wiring loom. So what I've done is I've just taken some butt connectors, and I put together one individual lead to the remote relay bank, and allowed it to where when I press C, it's going to apply ground to the motor and shut it off. As you can see, I've also spliced it into another direction to a momentary switch on the front panel. And so I can also kill it here and just leave it in the run position when I'm done. So that kills the motor just like that. So this allows me to shut it off manually here, and then with the key fob here. And the reason I like that better is, like I said, I want to leave this in the run position when I'm out using it on a regular basis, so that I can always come back with the key fob and kill it. I don't want to have to come to it and, well, I guess I'd never have to, I can always kill it with the key fob if you have it wired in here, but I want that option of being able to shut the fuel off and drain the carburetor prior to storing it. So then the last thing I want to discuss is we talked about power in, power out on this board. I want to show you how I brought power in. So I've got these two wires here, positive, negative, that come directly from the battery. And what I did there is I just ran it down the side, and I took the rubber boots off, and I ring terminaled the negative and positive wire, and then I just added it to the stack of rings that go onto the battery. So it's a clean install. And then on the positive side, I'm gonna reach just under here. On the positive side, I just used wire that had an inline fuse, not an inline fuse, but a blade fuse on inline to the power, so that this is all protected. I used a 5 amp fuse because on the pamphlet that come with the receiver, it's telling us that the receiver is not going to output more than 3 amps. Actually, it says it's going to be less than 3 amps. So I used a 5 amp fuse to protect this board, because I wanted to be able to have enough power to get through without, blowing a fuse every time I clicked it. So 5 amps should work. If we have issues with power, I'll jump up to 10 amp. But I want it as small as possible for obvious reasons. That's what fuses are for. So from the fuse, that power comes up and it runs to, and you can see my horrible wiring job here because I decided on the switch after the fact. But the wiring comes in, and just did a little spade connector here so that I can disconnect it if necessary, and that comes down to a power switch which I put on the front board. You'll notice I took out the parallel ports so I could put switches here because I wanted it to be as clean as possible. I've kept those parallel ports, and so what I'll do with these is I will make for the time in the future when I decide that I want to start using these, I will make just a small extension cord that will tie into these. I'll run it out the back the same way I put the power there, and then I'll run extension cord out the back so I can still use those parallel ports. Right now they're not necessary for me, so I just taped off the neutral and the hot leads, and we'll just leave them like that. So back to the switch. Like I said, I put the power switch for the relay bank right here, and so I have power coming in on this green line, and each switch is going to be different as far as powering, so make sure you look at the wiring instructions that come with the switches. The nicer the switch, the more functionality it has. So I just went with your standard press the button, turns power on, press the button. It also turns on the light, the LED light that indicates that the switch is on. So what happens then is when that switch is depressed, the blue output puts wire to the hot lead to the receiver. So switch is depressed, blue gets power applied to it. That goes out, and then it goes to that. But it also comes back to this red wire here, which illuminates the LED. And so then the last wiring of this switch is the ground wire, which I brought to a ring terminal just behind the 30 amp plug, which I'm going to do another video on that, probably on replacing this 30 amp plug from the standard 30 amp twist lock to a 30 amp RV style plug. It fits. I've seen somebody do it. Maybe I'll just link that video. Anyway, so that's grounded there, and now what that ground does for the switch is it allows the LED ring to light up when it's depressed. So this, I think, covers how you wire this up. Hopefully it's clear enough that you guys can go in and wire that yourself. Like I said, I haven't seen any videos that covered the wiring setup of this in clarity. So I wanted to make sure that you guys could have that functionality and do what other people are doing for as cheap as you should be able to do it. You know, if you're buying a generator for any purpose, then you already inherently most likely have some level of ability and inclination to do things. So this is a simple start, and it makes this generator go from I'm kind of sacrificing a little bit because it's a good quiet generator but it's cheap, to oh, this is as nice now as a Westinghouse or a Owens Cumming generator, which I like both of those. The only benefit now compared to this one and that one is that it's a 4,000 running watt and this is a 3,000 running watt. Currently, I don't have the need for anything over 3,000, so $575 plus maybe $25 for the remote, and I feel good about this. If you guys have any questions, just go down in the description or down in the comments. I try to do real good at answering questions because I have a lot of questions when I get into this stuff, and so I want to be able to answer those clearly. I don't like going into things guessing, and so this is done. I know what's going on, and I want to pass it on to you. So thanks, guys, and have a good one. Enjoy your generator. Get out in the white outdoors and enjoy it.